Hey guys, so at this point you should be done with your bell ringer and you should have already picked up everything that you need for class. So let's go ahead and look at our agenda and the focus of today's lesson, and then we'll jump in and go from there. So, to hold on one second. Okay, so today we're gonna go over the history of forensics. And that's going to be a note sheet. You already have that PowerPoint, so just make sure you have it close by. I would grab a highlighter if you didn't already turn those back in, then you should still have it, or maybe you need to go grab one. And then you also need a pen or a pencil because you might have some additional things you need to write down. When you're done with notes, you're going to spend some time between your notes and the book and your phones, which you can use for research. And you're going to fill out that sheet about the important people in the field of forensics. So I've given you the specific names that I want you to look into, and I've given you exactly what I want you to find out about them. And I want you to fill that out, please. That's going to just kind of focus in the people that we talked about already and just make sure that you really understand why we care about them and how they've helped the field to grow. And then we just got done talking about forensic careers and some different types of jobs within our field. So I want you to do a little bit of practice. So you're going to do the packet that's titled Who Would You Call? And it's all about forensic careers. So you're going to read a couple of scenarios and then figure out who would be the best forensic scientist to call to deal with this specific kind of evidence in this specific situation. Okay, so today's focus, when you are done with class today, these are the things that I would like you to either be able to do or to know. So you need to be able to identify the major people who have contributed to the field of forensic science, especially when the field was just starting out. You need to know the difference between criminalistics and forensic science. That will be in your notes, so just make sure you pay attention and look out for that. You need to complete the important people sheet, and then I want you to practice applying those forensic careers to some scenarios or some situations. All right, so at this stage, if you will go ahead and grab pens, pencils, highlighters, and pull your notes, I'm going to go ahead and switch to the notes right now. Okay, and if you're hearing weird sounds in the background, I'm doing this at school. The air just kicked on because, 7:08 p.m. is really when we need air. So, yeah. Okay, so you have the black and white version of this. Hopefully you have everything you need and we're ready to go. I might be writing some things on the screen. It just kind of depends on what I feel you need. So ready, set, go. Okay, here's our usual copyright information. Okay, so let's talk about the word criminalistics, which we actually haven't mentioned before now. We've been using the term forensic science this entire time, and it's not that we're wrong, but there is one major difference between a criminalist and a forensic scientist. So a criminalist is a person, or it's the study or the application, if you will, of science to collecting and more specifically analyzing physical evidence. It's this analyzing that's the big key words. If you would highlight, underline something, that would be great. So you're probably thinking to yourself, well, that's kind of what a forensic scientist does. So how is that different, Miss Courtney? Well, it's different because people in our society believe that both of these people do the same thing, but they don't. So the criminalist is the scientist. They're the ones that's analyzing the actual evidence and figuring out, well, what exactly does the evidence show you? The forensic scientist, in the true sense of the word, is more like a crime scene investigator or a CSI. So off to the side, if you will please write what I'm about to write down. Warning, my handwriting on this kind of sucks. It'll be okay. Okay, so whoops, sorry. Oh. Your forensic scientist is like your CSI or crime scene investigator. And the major difference is while they also collect evidence, they're not responsible. Sorry, y'all. They're not responsible for the analyzing part. Their job is to collect and process the evidence from a crime scene. Okay, so again, your criminalist is the one that's doing the analyzing. They're the ones running the experiment. They're the ones looking at data. So let's write that in. That's spelled all the way wrong. Okay, so they run the experiments and they look at data. Ugh. Okay, and it's your forensic scientist that collects and processes the evidence. So think of this as these are the people that will bag and tag your evidence. Okay, and when I get back and we start doing labs with this, you'll see better what I mean by bag and tag. All right, we're moving on to the next slide. So before we jump into the people and the history and what they've done, let's talk a little bit about where the field of just like law enforcement, forensics, figuring out who's done something bad kind of comes from. So previous to the 17th century, we didn't have what's exactly known as the best system for figuring out if somebody was guilty or if someone was innocent. Went a little something like this. Someone accuses you of doing something wrong. You've stolen their sheep or their cow or duck, whatever. You get confronted by the person accusing you. So they might see you in the market or in the street and they'll scream at you, "Hey, you stole my cow." And someone would hear them and they would cart you off to jail. And then they would torture you. And if you confessed to the crime under the pain of torture, which, to be honest, a lot of people would, then automatically you were guilty and something happened to you, some kind of punishment. They put you in stocks, they cut off your hand, they killed you, whatever. But if you had the strength to resist the torture, if you could keep your story, keep saying, "I didn't do anything wrong," even though they might have been clipping your fingers one by one or burning off your knuckles or who knows whatever else, then obviously you were innocent. Yep, that's where our judicial system came from, people. Aren't you glad you live when you live? Okay, so now let's start talking about who some of these early forensic scientists were, what they did, what's their claim to fame, that kind of thing. So you're just really paying attention to the people I point out, the things that I highlight. If I add in anything extra, please write that down on your slides as well. Okay, our first guy, we're kind of going to do this in chronological order. We're starting off with Mr. Carl Scheele. Carl Scheele was a Swedish chemist, and his claim to fame is that he devised a way to test for the presence of poison. So we're pretty sure that the going poison at the time was arsenic, but his test was just for the presence of poison in corpses. Now, the catch for Mr. Scheele's test is that the poison had to be present in large quantities. This did not work if it was a tiny little bit of poison. So they had to have been poisoning you for months at this point for him to be able to tell, once you were dead, that you had been indeed poisoned. So let's write down that the poison had to be in large amounts. So poison present in large amounts. Okay, that's the only way the test would work. If you only had a tiny bit of poison, it didn't work out for you. He couldn't actually tell if you had been poisoned